From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
July 1st is now 2 weeks away, the date that statutorily the state budget is meant to be done.
But whether it will be remains the Lansing question.
On today's show, a school's advocate on what a late budget means for Michigan. But first...
well, just where does the budget stand?
Elena Dernbaugh is here. She's assistant editor at Gongwar News Service, which covers the state capital. Elena, hi.
Hello.
So just fill us in. Where are we right now, 2 weeks to go?
You know, that is a great question. We are in a place where many people are looking to what happened last year and are feeling nervous. We are further ahead than we were last year. Both the Senate and the House have passed their own versions of the budget, but there might be some negotiations happening behind the scenes to get us to a place where we can pass a final budget. But there's not a lot of talk out in the open. And just yesterday, House Speaker Matt Hall doubled down on threats that July 1, October 1 may not happen. But the appropriations chairs in both the House and the Senate, Sarah Anthony and Ann Bolin, are saying that they're serious about getting it done by July 1.
Okay.
So we don't know what that means.
I mean, so you alluded to negotiations, but what do we know? I mean, who's talking to whom 2 weeks out?
Right now, it is the appropriations chairs talking to one another, Sarah Anthony and Ann Bolin. House Speaker Matt Hall is involved. He has made it very clear that he wants to be very involved in those negotiations. And then, of course, we have the governor's office. But Governor Gretchen Whitmer is not in the state, not in the country right now. So given the fact that Hall primarily wants to speak with Whitmer, that could slow things down.
So, Elena, last year they missed the deadline. They had to adopt a short continuation budget. House Speaker Matt Hall, the Republican leader, is saying, well, maybe we should do a continuation budget this year. So, two questions. What would a continuation budget look like, and would Democrats go for that?
I mean, it doesn't work at the state level like it does at the federal level. As you guys know, it has to be a whole nother appropriation bill. It's not just a resolution, but it would just kind of continue basic spending levels at where they are right now. And would Democrats go for it? Maybe. I mean, it's an election year. I don't think it helps Republicans to be moving toward the election and to be saying, hey, we don't have a budget, but we're just gonna kind of extend what we've got going on right now and stay tuned till after the election. That doesn't seem like a great thing to tell voters because while the average voter may not care about the budget on a day-to-day basis, when there's not a budget, that starts affecting a lot of things. So it doesn't seem like a great idea to go into the election without a budget. So maybe Democrats would be like, sure, yeah, go ahead, buddy.
And what's the likelihood and just the logistics that a budget could get done in time for the statutory deadline of July 1st?
I will be incredibly shocked at this point if we have it in time for July 1. We're at a point right now where basically those conversations need to be wrapping up. We're 2 weeks out. Everyone kind of needs to have an idea of what they want and where it's going. And then, you know, that language needs to be drafted. And with a budget that's an $80 billion document, that's going to take some time. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but from what we know, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to make July 1.
That is Elena Dernbaugh, assistant editor at Gongwar News Service. Elena, thanks so much for breaking this down for us.
Thanks, Elena.
Thanks, guys.
This is It's Just Politics.
School districts and many local governments start their new fiscal years on July 1st. So they're in a predicament, not knowing how much money they'll get yet from the state until a budget is passed. Robert McCann is executive director of K through 12 Alliance. It's a coalition representing school superintendents across the state. He's also former chief of staff to Governor Gretchen Whitmer when she was in the legislature. Bob, welcome back to It's Just Politics.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Well, I got to say, it feels a little like Groundhog Day. We talked last year around this time when a budget was not done by July 1st. What does this mean for schools in Michigan to not have a state budget ready yet?
Last year when the legislature just blew through their budget deadline, didn't get a budget done till October, it threw every school district in the state into a state of chaos, to put it directly. Because you just said it, districts cannot plan for the upcoming school year when they don't have the slightest idea how much money that they have to spend on any given program, whether that's staffing, whether that's programming, whether it's additional supports for students. They don't have the ability to make any sort of hiring or even retain their current staff in many cases when they don't have those figures. And we saw the damage that's happened this school year. And so the fact that we are here again 2 weeks from their budget deadline and they appear to be nowhere close to a deal is just inconceivable, yet somehow also not shocking to every school, or I should say every educator in the state right now.
Were schools sort of preparing for this possibility again because it did happen last year?
You can't really prepare for something like this, to effectively run any kind of organization, let alone something as crucial as a school district. You need certainty. And to have that, you have to be able to know at least the basics of what your funding structure is going to look like. And so, we could warn superintendents and say, it may happen again, but there's really nothing that a superintendent can do to prepare themselves or prepare their districts for chaos that comes from this kind of legislative dysfunction. So I would say they're not necessarily surprised, but there's no way that means that they are any better prepared for it.
So, Bob, what do you think of Speaker Matt Hall's idea that the legislature maybe would just adopt a stopgap continuation budget?
Wildly irresponsible and out of touch with how an organization runs. There is not a business, let alone something like a school district, that can effectively plan for a year of spending and operations with a 4-month budget. That's not how anything works. And so to even suggest that as a possibility, to suggest that he can just arbitrarily decide that he's not going to do his most basic constitutional responsibility, which is to pass a school aid budget, simply because he doesn't want to, is just not doing his job at this point. And so to that, I say, it doesn't do a school district any good to have a 4-month budget. It doesn't do them any good to be able to hire, to be able to plan effectively to support our students for the upcoming year, to give them a partial 4-month budget. So that's not a plan. That's not an option. And it's not something that he should even be considering.
Who is most at fault in your mind?
I think the unfortunate reality is that we're seeing we're not seeing anybody take this seriously enough. Whether that's the Senate taking a couple of days off last week when we're 3 weeks away from a deadline, whether that's the governor leaving the country this week when we're 2 weeks short of a budget deadline, and then certainly Matt Hall suggesting that he might just ignore the budget deadline and play politics with all of this. What we need is people taking this as a crisis, because it is one. It's one of their own making, but it is absolutely a crisis for our schools. We are, going into right now a period where districts are finalizing their own budgets with their school boards because they are required to by law. And they are doing it once again this year with just complete guesswork in terms of what their budget is going to be. And that means they are not hiring people. That means they are pink slipping people. That means that they are not implementing many of the programs that the legislature itself wants us to be implementing, things like literacy and additional reading coaches and tutors in our classrooms. Those are the things not getting done right now because the legislature isn't taking this seriously enough. And that's what needs to change. We need everybody to stand up and tell their leadership there is no excuse for not getting this done this year. It has to. That if that means we're here on weekends, if that means we are here on Mondays and Fridays when they're normally not, it doesn't matter. This has to get done.
Do you think that would make a difference?
Absolutely. I think if people started holding their own leadership accountable in the House and saying that this is not something to play politics with, this is not something that we can that our kids deserve to have themselves dragged into these unrelated political fights, then we can get something done. If you look at the two budgets that have already been passed, the House budget and the Senate budget, they're 95% the same budget. So there's absolutely no reason that a budget deal cannot get finished other than they are simply choosing not to do so at this point. And that's the part that has to get changed.
So, Bob, you worked in the legislature for many years, including for a legislator named Gretchen Whitmer. Where has the governor been in all of this?
I haven't heard her talk about it a lot, and I think that that's frustrating for educators, that we need leadership right now to step up and say, we're not moving past this July 1 budget or deadline again. And that hasn't been there. And that's not to say that she doesn't have her people tuned in and they're aware of what's going on. I'm sure Budget Director Jen Flood is engaged in these conversations still. But, I think everybody right now is looking for someone to step up and be the leader in the room and say, we are going to sit here until a deal is done. And that hasn't happened yet. And I'm hoping it does when she is back in town, because we need that right now.
So it's not enough to you that the governor has said getting a budget done by the deadline is a priority, that she has been absent other than that?
I mean, everybody says it's a priority, but until it gets done, it's not one. And so we need action more than we need talk at this point.
What's your message to lawmakers?
Do your job. I mean, it's pretty simple. Every one of them that was elected to do constitutionally one thing, and that's ensure a budget is passed. On the K-12 side of things, there is an additional law in place that says it has to be done by July 1. And last year, they just simply didn't do it. And that means you have failed at your most basic job performance skill at that point. And so what we want them to do is just do their job and keep kids out of these political battles that they keep finding themselves getting into. To suggest that we're going to hold the K-12 budget hostage to a battle over property tax reform is ridiculous at this point. We're 2 weeks out from a deadline, and nobody in the world thinks you can responsibly reform an entire property tax system in a state in 2 weeks. It's not going to happen. And so pretending that it is and dragging these kids that just want basic supports for their learning next year is just irresponsible. So what we're just asking, do your job, get this budget done.
So, Bob, we asked Elena Dernbaugh this same question. Is it even rational to think that a budget this big and of this scale could get done in 2 weeks and have it done close to right?
I think when we look again at the two budgets that have been passed, they're largely the same budget. So the answer of can it be done in the next 2 weeks? The answer is absolutely. It could be done in a day. The question is the transparency part of it. Last year when they finally did pass the budget in October, it was done in the middle of the night and nobody had seen what was in it before it was voted on. And it turned out there was some bad stuff in it. And that's how bad stuff usually winds up in budgets, is when there's no transparency involved in it. And so, to answer both of your questions, yes, it can get done. Can it get done responsibly? Can it get done in the right way? That remains to be seen. But certainly there is time within 2 weeks to do all of those things if they commit to getting in a room, getting these deals done, and working with us to ensure that everything in the budget is able to be used to the best effect inside of our classrooms this year.
What do you make of this sense that it sounds like the appropriations chair in the House, Republican Ann Bolin, is saying, hey, it's still a possibility, and Matt Hall is sort of kicking the can down the road?
Yeah, we had about 60 superintendents up here in Lansing last week, and we met with Representative Bolin, and we met with Senator Anthony as well, both of the budget chairs, and yep. Both of them expressed optimism, and that was a good sign for us. We think that the two people most directly involved in these, in putting the budgets together anyway, believe it can get done because they've put the work in to get them in shape enough that it can get done still. Now, there is still that big hurdle that has to get cleared of, the speaker can override all of that. And so what we are hoping is that Representative Boleyn and other members of his caucus can get him to understand the urgency of getting this budget done again this year and to leave the politics aside.
Well, I'm not going to leave the politics aside. What does it mean for Michigan politics that one person, given it's the Speaker of the House, but one person can have such a massive impact on the state budget?
It's frustrating because, I think that in years past, yes, of course, politics plays a huge role with everything that goes on inside of the Capitol, but we at least used to keep the K-12 budget out of the real muck of that. And so yes, they may have been mired in deep, deep battles over various policy issues, but there was at least an understanding that no matter what, the K-12 budget was going to get done. And that just doesn't seem to exist anymore, that they are so willing, and certainly Speaker Hall in his comments last week, so directly willing to use the K-12 budget as a negotiation point for completely unrelated issues, I think is extremely frustrating, not only for educators, but for the general public who just wants to see this kind of political nonsense stop inside of their capital. Yeah. So, yeah, it's definitely very frustrating to see, a Speaker of the House so directly inject politics into the K-12 budget.
Bob, finally, what are you going to be watching for, let's say, over the next few days or the next 2 weeks to kind of get a sign of where things are going?
Just keeping our ears open to what lawmakers are telling us. We're certainly going to keep reaching out to the budget chairs and having conversations with them, and certainly continuing to press all of the members of the legislature of the urgency to do this. I know superintendents, school board members, teachers from around the state are on the phone and sending emails today to every single legislator, letting them know, number one, the urgency of getting this done, and number two, the consequences of going back home for the summer and not having a budget deal done again. They are going to hear very loudly from a lot of people if they fail at this job again. And we are hoping that they are going to step up and say, we're not going to let that happen.
But what would be a signal to those of us not in the room, not in the negotiations, that things are moving in a good direction?
Just people being in Lansing and talking, and as little as small of a bar as that is to clear, it really hasn't happened in the last week. We haven't heard any confirmation that budget talks have even been occurring over the last week or two, let alone progress being made. So I think if you see, Senator Anthony, Chairwoman Boleyn, if you see, people from the Gov's budget team walking into a room together inside the Capitol, I mean, that alone would be progress at this point. So we are just hoping to see signs that actual negotiations are taking place, which, 2 weeks out from the budget deadline should be a bare minimum of a bar that they should be able to clear, but that remains yet to be seen.
That is Bob McCann. He's Executive Director of K-12 Alliance and a legislative veteran. Bob, thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Bob.
Of course. Thanks, guys.
And that is It's Just Politics for today. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.